Alright guys, we're going to hop right on in here. As I stated, we're going to be talking about the Armed Forces Entertainment Tour I did back in 2009. As I said in the previous episode, I wasn't going by my full name anymore, Scott Joseph Ferris. I was going by a band name that I created for my solo acoustic act called City Like Drive. And that was what we toured as on that tour. And at the time, I remember meeting to go over all the paperwork for this tour and the contract for it with Armed Forces Entertainment, which was facilitated by Todd, my manager at the time, with Galgo Music Group. And we also had some connections that helped, I think, push us along the way with a division of MTV called MTVU, stands for University, was what the acronym was for. And they did a lot of programs, put on a lot of like events and stuff for different universities. They were actually the ones that helped me get a couple of my shows on some of my tours. The most notable one that I had a blast at was in College Station, Texas. Still remember that radio interview like yesterday. It was the College Station in College Station, Texas. It cracked me up. But when I met Todd to go over this contract, it was at a kind of the midway point between where he lived near St. Louis and where I was living at the time in Whitehall, my hometown. We met at a restaurant outside of Jerseyville, Illinois, that's still there, but I don't think it's called the same thing anymore. It was called Hickory Grove Restaurant. And so we went, long story short, we went over the contract there at the Hickory Grove Restaurant. I signed the deal, and I had to get together a band to play with me. So we later had a meeting with the guys that I had picked for my band, which was my dad on drums, because I'd played with him, and he's excellent, and my uncle on guitar, and a guy named Jonathan Coates on bass. And Jonathan Coates is actually the guy that gave me my first guitar lessons ever. So it's kind of pretty cool to play with him, after he pretty much taught me in the beginning. And then I also took lessons from his cousin Kenny Coates. I don't know what he's doing now. He's always on tour with somebody. He's a guitar tech, I think, for Sugarland right now, or Brad Paisley. But anyways, so it's cool to have the guy that gave me my first guitar lessons, Jonathan Coates, playing in the band with us. And so after we had then we had a later meeting at Hickory Grove again with them guys and my manager Todd to kind of go over some of the details and the passport information. And then fast forward to maybe whenever we met for the contract and to go over the tour information. That was about late February 2009. So fast forward to about April. My uncle, who's also a professional wood carver and written many books and travels all over and stays busy and super talented, he had some stuff, I think, come up to where he had to travel to go do some carving classes and couldn't make the tour. So I was like, oh boy. So what are we going to do with this? So I was trying to find a lead guitar player. I asked around a couple places, put it up on MySpace, had some inquiries. Nothing was panning out, and so I was supposed to leave at the end of June. I think it was like June 25th or something like that. And so by this time it's like mid-May, and we had to turn in our passport information. And my dad at the time, I don't believe that there was some issue with his passport or something to where he wasn't able to get it. It wasn't going to be back in time or something like that. So long story short, here I am. I'm down to me and Jonathan Coates, the guy that got me giving me my first guitar lessons. We're the only two band members I have for this thing, and it is a month before the thing starts. So in desperation, I reach out to my manager Todd, and I'm like, shot him an email. I'm like, hey brother, this is what's going on. I don't have a drum player or a lead guitar player. And he's like, I can get you a lead guitar player. Another band that he managed, I forget what their name was, but they were really popular in the St. Louis area and Missouri market, that whole region. Hooked us up with this guy, Matt Kleinman. and he was fantastic. I got in touch with him over MySpace and then on the emails, and I shot him over the set list, and he pretty much just learned the whole thing within the first couple weeks. Well, we had a month time frame whenever I got hooked up with Matt. So after a week later, Matt emailed me back. He's like, I got the set list down. Just let me know when you guys are ready to get together. And so this time, we're about 3 weeks before the tour. I don't have a drum player. And I'm at the local Paradise Club, which is like it's an old VFW building that is now called Paradise Club. It's a bar in my hometown. And I see this guy, Steve Vincent, that is my third cousin, I believe. His dad and my grandpa are first cousins, so whatever that works, third or fourth, however that is. But anyways, I see Steve, and I know that he's played music forever, and I actually had one of his CDs, and super talented guy, plays multiple instruments. And I was telling him, I was talking about music, and I was kind of telling him about what I was going through trying to find a drum player, and he goes, I play drums. I'm like, that's great, but I mean, we're leaving in like 3 weeks. He's like, he's like, I'll do it if you want me to. I was like, all right, man, because I was striking out everywhere I asked. A lot of the people that inquired about it didn't have a current passport. Steve did have a passport, so we had like 3 practices, I think, and then we're heading to leave for Tegucigalpa, Honduras was the first stop. We also had Ecuador and Costa Rica on there as well before Bogota, Colombia, but those 2 dates got cut off. I don't remember what happened with the Ecuador and Costa Rica dates, like why we ended up not doing those, and those got removed from our itinerary. But trying to think here. See, whenever yes, this was very interesting because I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan, one of the greatest entertainers in the world. And in June of 2009 was when he passed away, and we were in the airport. I forget which city. It was either St. Louis or Miami when I saw it announced on the news early in the morning. And so that was pretty wild. And then also another thing that was going on, it was pretty crazy, which the Armed Forces Entertainment, United States government assured us that we would be safe and everything would be all right. If you Google like June 2009 Honduras, Tegucigalpa, Honduras coup, basically the people of Honduras overthrew their government, and that was a couple days before we went down there. So we hop on the plane, cruise over St. Louis, Miami to Tegucigalpa, Honduras. And I tell you what, if you guys have never watched, check it out on YouTube, like the Tegucigalpa, Honduras landing strip, it is one of the most terrifying plane landings I've ever been a part of. And it's not because there was a bad pilot. The pilots were fantastic and got us there safely. But it's just it's a lot different than most of the landing spots that you see, landing strips. So check that out too. Tegucigalpa, Honduras airport landing. It's a sight to see, and it was crazy to be a part of. Glad we made it out. But as soon as we arrived there in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, like I said, it was a very tumultuous time there in Tegucigalpa with the citizens of Honduras overthrowing its government. So literally, whenever we got off the plane in Honduras and Tegucigalpa, we walked off the plane, and everybody else that was on the plane with us got led off into a line to the right, and they took us 4 guys in the band, and we went forward to the baggage claim, and we were the only, I don't know where they took these other people to, but we were the only 4 people around the baggage claim, and surrounding us, like in the big baggage claim area, was, I don't know, maybe 30 military, a mixture of like U.S. military and Honduran military. I'm assuming they were from their army division, just based on what their what they were wearing. But yeah, they were surrounding us. Then they had like their guns out and just holding on to them. It wasn't a stressful time. I mean, they were just. It seemed just more like an extra security precaution, since we were. I don't know. It was just surreal. So, anyways, we got our luggage, and all these men escorted us out. We had 2 agents with us. Or no, 3. One was from the U.S. The other 2 were Honduran officials. All 3 super fantastic guys, and kind of walked us through the whole process of, like, they just walked us out this door after we got our baggage claim, and they loaded all of our stuff into these 2 like white vans, and we were off and going. I mean, from the baggage claim to getting into the vans and on the road was literally maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So they hustled us off there, and we're cruising up through all the hills and all sorts of stuff and Tegucigalpa to get to the Soto Cano Airbase. And driving there was, or riding there and seeing how the people drive was really a culture shock for me, because like they use the turn signals to pass each other. Like if I'm behind you and I'm going to pass you, on the left, I'm going to put my turn signal on the left side and pass you. And they just fly. Not really a lot of speed limits there either. So basically we get to the Soto Cano Airbase, which is basically like in a jungle-like area, which was super cool. And we get there on the airbase, and they take us directly to where we're staying at there on the base. And the base was super secure. It was a mixture of U.S. Air Force and Army, and Honduran Army and Air Force. So we get to this where we're staying at. We're all staying together in this one building. It was called a Hooch, and basically it was like a big living room combined with a big kitchen, and then offshooting, on each side there was 3 bedrooms on each side. So we each had our own little bedroom, and basically it was like a big wood cabin basically. And it was really neat there too. I'd never really like experienced weather like they had there. Like you could be outside and it would rain for 1 minute, just downpour. Then boom, the sun would come out, and it didn't even look like it even rained, because the sun and the heat would just evaporate all the water. But they didn't have bathrooms in the Hooch. They were the bathrooms and showers were a little bit down the road, walking distance. And they had there was different like bars and things there on the base. We didn't get to leave the base. We were scheduled to do some different walking tours to go out into the city, but with all the stuff happening with the coup and the people overthrowing the government, that they wanted to keep us safe there on the base. And so anyways, they took us to the bar that we were going to be playing at. They had already had the sound system and everything already set. We just had to run and do sound check really quick, and then the next morning we went to the local Soto Cano Airbase radio station and did an interview. And I remember the guy was talking about favorite sports teams on the air, and I said that I actually have 2 favorite football teams. And he's like, who are they? He's like, you're from Illinois, so it was the Bears, and at the time the Rams. They were in St. Louis, no longer. They're in LA. I said, no, actually the Minnesota Vikings and the New Orleans Saints. He just couldn't believe it. He's like, but they're so far away from it. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just what happened, when I got hooked on Dante Culpepper and Randy Moss and Chris Carter up there with the Vikings, and everything that Aaron Brooks, he was a former quarterback for the Oakland Raiders at the time, and then he got shipped over to the Saints and did some magnificent work there. And then I was just hooked on Breeze, and yeah, so I loved the Saints, and the Vikings still do. Still my 2 favorite teams. And whenever they play each other, I don't know who to root for. I usually find myself, every game's a little bit different. And so anyways, we did that, and then we the radio tour. I remember the breakfast, like the food there was all pretty good, and because we got to eat there on the military base, and man, I tell you, it was just a smorgasbord there. Just everything you could think of was there. So we played the show that night, and before the show, when I was doing sound check, there was a couple U.S. military representatives there that were kind of our guides for the day, and both of them played guitar and sang. So we ended up incorporating a song that they knew into our set, and one of them came up, played my guitar, the other one sang, and the rest of the guys backed him up. It was pretty cool. And then I think we had one or two nights where we could kind of do whatever we wanted. So one night we went out to this Air Force bar. Each bar was kind of ran by like the Army or the Air Force, or I mean they just kind of all stayed in their own little groups, or big groups. There was a lot of them. But one of the guys, he was like, I'm going to be your tour guide tomorrow. I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, we're going to look at some Blackhawks. I'm like, what? And so we got to go check out some Blackhawks. And they are, it's such a fantastic thing to see inside. And we got to try a military meal, the dry mixture. Actually, wasn't too bad. I had the biscuits and gravy. It's pretty, I mean, in a pinch, it would not hurt at all. And I'm sure that they've since upgraded. I mean, that's been 9 years ago. Whew, man. Doesn't seem like it. And so the next thing, we hung out there a couple nights, and we're off to our flight to Bogota, Colombia. Now that show was like the big one of the three shows that we did. We did two in Tegucigalpa, Honduras at the Soto Cano Airbase, and we did one in Bogota, Colombia. And we got flown in there, and we got set up in the best suites that they had at this Holiday Inn Express. They were literally still building it while we were there, and our 4 rooms were literally, I believe, the only 4 rooms that anybody was staying in at the hotel. I didn't think it was even truly open yet. So and then we also we got warned. I wouldn't say warned. We kind of given a briefing on our way to the hotel before we got there by the U.S. ambassador's office, like the security there. Kind of went over some different details of be wary of this white powdery substance. Sometimes it can basically just knock you out, and people get robbed all the time. So we were wary of white substances, and luckily nobody got hurt or anything. It was fantastic. The people were great. Everybody. Our guide for the 3 or 4 days that we were there, she was a local. She worked for the U.S. Embassy, and she was also an actress on a really popular soap opera there in that area. So it was kind of neat just to visit with her and kind of hear a lot about her experiences. And she took us out to some different restaurants, let us try the local foods. And at nighttime, we were basically on our own. So me and Steve and Matt, we decided to go to this local club that I had a band at. It was right across the street from our hotel. And we go over there, and they're playing all sorts of music. I mean, everything from reggae to some hip hop and different things. And Steve got to talking to one of the guys in the band on their break, and this was a big 9-piece band with 5 singers. It was fantastic. And Steve got to mention, they started talking about music, and they found out that Steve played fiddle. And he's like, dude, you should bring it in and play with us. And so Steve went back to the hotel, got his fiddle, and set up there for a whole set with them. And I believe if you look up on youtube.com/Midwest Avenue, or just type in Midwest Avenue, Bogota, Colombia, you can check out Steve playing the fiddle with this band. I recorded him playing there. It's pretty cool. So then the next day, Yeah, the next day was when we went to. It was on July 3rd, 2009. We got hired there what we were there for was to play the 4th of July celebration at the U.S. Embassy. like the stage was literally right in front of the embassy, and we got to go into the embassy. That was where our dressing room was, and we were the co-headliners of the show with a really huge South American pop act named Fanny Lou, FANNYLU. Look her up. She's got some good stuff, but she had it going on. I'm gonna tell you, she was fantastic on stage. They had like 4 other opening acts during the day, or early evening there. But I remember going up there and doing sound check, and Sony Music was doing all the sound there, and it was my first time on a stage that big. It was, and having that type of sound, I mean, it was huge. And there was over 5,000 people. They invited 5,000 of the local Bogota citizens into the embassy, and they had different like food trucks, drinks, and all sorts of things just all around. And they invited 5,000 of the Bogota citizens, and then plus like a lot of the embassy officials and workers and their families. They were all there celebrating the 4th of July as well. So there was 5,000 plus. I don't know what the actual thing was, but it was broadcast on local TV, which is pretty wild to have all the cameras and stuff around. I just remember doing sound check and looking out into this huge empty space and just feeling like this is amazing. And I made it a focus at this time to really just soak it all in, because I had gotten so burnt out prior to this trip of touring and just the whole grind, and then self-doubt and different things like that started creeping in. I was gaining weight, and it became this thing that I didn't know how to control it or just handle it. But I made it a mission that I would deal with that after I got home. But I was going to enjoy this trip because things like this don't always happen all the time. So I wanted to soak it in. So I just remember standing there on the stage in front of that empty lot out there in front of the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, Colombia, and being like, I'm in freaking South America and have gotten to meet all these amazing people, and I'm so fortunate that I get to entertain these people tonight. It's like I'm like super just floored in gratitude, basically, just so grateful for the situation. So we did our sound check, headed off the stage, back into the embassy, did some local press regarding the show. Then it was about showtime, and I remember like in all my anticipation for this and excitement, I could not remember any of my schooling for some reason, so I asked the lady that was our guide there, and I was like, hey, how do I say good evening in Spanish? She's like, buenos noches. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I remember we did like, I think in that 45-minute set we did like 6 originals, 6 covers, something like that. But the first song I remember like it was yesterday. I still remember being right there. We opened up with one of my favorite covers to play of all time, which was Only Want to Be With You by Hootie and the Blowfish. And I just remember going up there. We had a little intro for it where the music would stop, and then as soon as the music stopped, I just remember going, Buenos noches, Bogota! And then it was just like, you would have thought like, I don't know, Elvis Presley had walked out on the stage or something, had just the response, like they were just having a blast. And I just remember as soon as hearing that roar back after I said that, it still to this day sends chills like from top of my head to the bottom of my feet. Like it was just, I was almost like shell shocked. It was like boom. And I remember just turning around to Steve while he was back there on the drums, and he counted off the 1, 2, 3, 4, and we went boom right into the song. And man, it was just, it all went so fast. And I still remember like playing that first, had my capo on the second fret, playing the E chord, and like turning around looking down to Steve, and then like putting my head down and looking down at my feet, and I'm like, I'm wearing freaking brown moccasins playing on the stage in front of the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, Colombia. This is crazy. Oh man. So we did the show, and it was such a freaking blast. And remember another thing I remember, Matt Kleeman, who also jumped on the show with us, since he was such a fantastic dude. I mean, I can't say enough about the guy, the talent that he has. Not only as a guitar player, he was only the lead guitar player in his band that he was in, but the dude could sing. I remember hearing him sing, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna sing some songs at this show. And he's like, really? And so I'm like, what are some good, like, popular covers, you know? And so one of them was Any Way You Want It by Journey, and he rocked the heck out of that song up there on stage. I mean, he was a rock star, man. I remember talking to him, just as a side note, whenever we were sitting in our hooch in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, on the Soto Cano Airbase. I was sitting there talking to him in the living room, just kind of, I was still getting to know him because I'd only met him a few times. Then we talked about music over the internet, over the email. Over the internet. Man, I sound like I'm 100 years old. Yeah, on the internet, I'll tell you what. Okay. But anyways, I was sitting there talking to Matt, and at this point, I'd already heard him sing. And I'm like, how come, like, you don't, like, even try something solo or start your own band, man? I'm like, you got some super talent. He's like, I've definitely thought about it. And I remember, I think it was on his left forearm. It may have been his right, but I'm pretty sure it was his left. He had a huge forearm tattoo of an older style microphone, like the one that Elvis is famous for using. He had that with like some flames around it, and I just thought that was the coolest tattoo. And I just remember him looking at me, and he's like, I've always wanted to be a singer, you know, because that's just one of my passions. And he's like, that's why I got this tattoo with this microphone. He's like singing. He's like, he just pointed out the tattoo, and he's like, this is my bread and butter. And I just remember saying that. It was the first time I ever heard that quote. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So anyways, we're back on stage there in Bogota, Colombia, and Matt rocked out on that song. And so we finished up our set. Then we walk off stage, visit with Fannie Lou for a minute backstage, and boom, she's up on stage and rocking it. Everybody there is a huge fan of hers. We're out in the crowd so we go around to the crowd to take it all in and watch Fannie Lou's performance. And it was just taking pictures with everybody and visiting with the local folks there. It was a complete blast. And then I remember we were supposed to fly out the next morning on July 4th. And so we flew out that morning, got delayed an hour due to weather in Bogota before we left. So we flew out an hour late. So by the time we got up to Miami, Florida, because our goal that night, me and Steve was like, you know, we're getting back from this trip. It's going to be 4th of July, which is a big deal in our hometown. We're going to go out with all of our friends afterwards whenever we get back. And so we're an hour late getting to Miami. We miss our flight. The next flight's for like not another like 7 hours. So we're just stuck. And the only thing open is a Burger King in the airport. So we're like, I remember me and Matt laying down on the floor, and he was the only one smart enough to bring headphones and his laptop. So like me and him are sitting there sharing headphones, watching, I forget what movie, but we're sitting there like watching movies for hours. Share like those just the two earbuds. He had one, I had the other. We're just sitting there watching movies on a very uncomfortable Miami airport floor. Then we all flew back to St. Louis that next day on the 5th, and we got home. And then just to give you some context of what was to happen, that was my last show for almost a year and a half, 2 years. And I didn't touch a guitar since. Like I had stated earlier, I kind of gained some weight, self-doubt, burnout from traveling all the time and being by myself. You know, that can take a toll on you if you're not aware of how you're feeling and your thoughts and things at times, which I've since, wouldn't say I'm a master because it's a practice, but I've since changed that whole game. But I basically was like, you know, you would think after coming off of a high like that would just motivate you to do more. And I wanted to do more, but I was unmotivated due to my lack of action, because action is what motivates you. So I didn't really talk to anybody about it at the time because like it was weighing on me. Like I knew I was gaining weight, didn't know what to do about it. I mean, all the answers are out there to how to handle these things. I wasn't willing to put in the work. It was the truth. But all these different components of just, this is my dream, how do I make it go further? I want to, but then again, I'm not feeling motivated. I'm feeling fat. I'm feeling uninspired. So I decided to get a regular job. And I started working at the local nursing home in my hometown, and that kind of helped with the way I was feeling about myself because the residents there were so fantastic. I worked in activities, and that would later play a role in my other professional career in the healthcare field that really helped me out a lot. But at the time, I was still having a lot of self-doubt. I had no interest in playing music. I felt defeated, which feeling defeated is just it's just a cop-out is all it was for me. Looking back on it and how I was able to get out of it at the time, I just felt like no direction and just basically depressed. And it was crazy to look back on it. I'm like, man, why the hell did I pull myself out of that? So yeah, I got a real job and quit playing music. I left my guitar in the closet for a good while, over a year and a half, almost a year. I can't remember. I had to look it up, but it was over a year for sure. Maybe a year and a half to 2 years, in that range, year and a half, 2 years. And then just to add to that, I was looking forward. We had some shows set up with Matt Kleeman's band that came in and rescued the day for that tour, the USO tour. I'm not going to get into the details or anything, but just to put it into context, Matt is no longer with us today. In December, he had passed away, and that was a real big shock to me. I remember for years after that. I mean, I got to know Matt really well in such a short time, and what a great, energetic, talented dude he was. He's still alive in my memory. I never got to meet a lot of his family. I think I talked to his sister once on MySpace after he had passed, just to kind of share some of my memories of him and let him know I was thinking of him. But yeah, that was kind of tough seeing the guy, and that's another thing, that a guy with so much talent and gone so soon, so young. It's a shame, a real big shame. But so after that happened, which that was just a crazy deal, and just it's hate to see somebody with so much talent, not be able to still pursue his dream, So then here I am feeling bad or whatever, depressed, it's such two different paradigms. At the time, back here at the end of 2009, early 2010, it's like, I wish I would have, pulled myself together and got my shit together, basically, and kept pursuing my dream, for Matt, because he was such a believer in everything in life, and such great energy to be around. I don't know if that dude ever had a bad day. Every time I ever encountered him, he was fantastic. So, I'm not sure, I doubt any of his family even listens to this or even probably remembers who I am, but if you guys are, Matt still has a heavy influence on me, and he still crosses my mind to this day here in 2018. Every once in a while, I'll click back through my emails, and I have some saved of his that he had sent, and joking around in there and stuff like that, so it's kind of cool. And he's such a pro too. So fast forward on to that. Whenever I started the job at the nursing home, was in October of 2009, a couple months after the tour. And so I was feeling just like I said, I basically explained how I felt, and I didn't know what to do about it. But working at the nursing home and being around the residents really did give me the boost while I was there. I said I had no interest in music, and what kind of brought me back to music was, at the time, I mean, I've always grew up listening to country music. I grew up always listening to country music. Easy for me to say. And but at the time, I never played it. And I remember hearing a song on the radio on my way home from work called Big Green Tractor by Jason Aldean. It just came out. And something about that song just stuck to me. And I remember it was on a Saturday. I was off. It was around 11:30 a.m. And I'm going to grab my guitar and figure out how to play this song. So I did. And that led to doing some more stuff and starting this band called Midwest Avenue, which at this point in 2018, we hadn't been together for almost 5 years now. I hadn't played a show, but November 16th, we're going to play our first show. So as I kind of close it up here on the SJP days and City Like Drive and the Armed Forces Entertainment Tour, I'm going to... real quick here, while we're talking about while I was talking about me gaining weight and everything. I knew I was gaining weight, but nobody ever told me to my face that I was, which I wish they would have earlier so I could have done something about it. People told me, you're filling out. No, that's a nice way. I figured out over time, that's a nice way of saying, hey, buddy, you might want to slow it down on whatever it is you're doing. But I remember I was out with some friends, and I went to this bar in my hometown area in Root House. And I saw this guy I hadn't seen since my senior year in high school, and I had since, I bet, gained 20 pounds or more. I hadn't seen this guy since my senior year. We graduated together, and so it'd been about 4 years since I had seen him, and 4 or 5. It'd been about 5 years at this time, and I ain't gonna say his name, but he changed the game for me. I went in there and I saw him. I'm like, hey man, how's it going? He goes, I'm doing good. He's like, what happened to the old Scott? Did you eat him? I laughed because it was funny, but man, I mean, talk about shaking me to my core, but that's what I needed, was that honesty. And that's what helped change the game for me in my life. Because it just, within the next day, it hit me. I'm like, I know who I am. I know what I need to take out of my life that's negative. I know where I need to go. It's going to be tough to get there, but if I stay true to who I am and what I want, it's all going to be fine. And by golly, folks, it's been wonderful. So, we're going to close this up. Like I said, that's a wrap on the SJP days, City Like Drive, the Armed Forces Entertainment Tour. We may revisit this with some of the guests I'm going to have on in the future. But as far as me telling my side of this story, that's going to be a bow on it. And coming up next, like I said, it's going to be we're going to be talking about Midwest Avenue, the band, where it got. It was the same band name as from years ago with my dad, my uncle, and my cousin, but a whole new batch of people. So it was a fantastic run, and we're going to be talking about it, and going to be talking about our show coming up on November 16th, our reunion show, almost 5 years. Heck yeah, this might be the longest podcast I ever done, so if you're still hanging in there, I appreciate you and know that. Thank you.